Hi guys, Rukshan here, and this video is about the dangers of the QR code system that's been implemented in Victoria, in Australia, and all around the world. But of particular interest to me is this latest news that's come out about Victoria Police trying to access QR code data for their own purposes. Now, when we were sold on this idea of using QR codes, it was all about protecting our health via contact tracing. There was no social contract entered into where we thought we will be going to businesses, going to work, going to school, just going about our daily lives, checking in everywhere using these apps, having this data collected by the government, and then having the police access this data so easily as well. It really raises a lot of alarm bells. Now, if you've been watching the coverage of this in Australia, a few weeks ago we had in Western Australia, the police had actually used QR code data in tracking and using it for one of their investigations. I think Western Australia has moved to implement some sort of legislative framework around protecting this type of data. Now, in Victoria, this question has come up because recently at a public hearing in a parliamentary inquiry, the police answered some questions about this, and there's a lot of people in the community, a lot of people in certain advocacy groups who are not comfortable with the idea of the police having access to this information, particularly as this was not the reason for creating this system in the first place. Policing has been going on for a long time in this country without them having access to QR code data. Now, when we entered this social contract with our government, by force, it seems, because they've just slowly, introduced this system as a thing of convenience to make it easier for you. Then it's like, oh, please, can you do it to help us? Now it's become, hey, it's mandatory. There's fines for businesses for not using this system. We're hearing about stories about it's being made to be used in schools. The government recently announced that, major workplaces have to have a QR code system for their employees to check in. So all of a sudden, we've gone from a system of convenience that's just, there to help the contact tracers to something that's the centerpiece of tracking us, where we go and what we do. And it's the centerpiece because there's consequences for businesses now. In one of my previous videos, I talked about how businesses are being fined for not using this system the way the government demands they use it. So with all this this backdrop of everything I've just said, now think about the implications of law enforcement having access to this data without any sort of legislation, without any sort of framework or guidelines to protect this data. Right now it's a free-for-all, and you have the deputy police minister, some Pearson dude, saying that it's wise to kind of leave it how it is because these kind of things might help prevent terrorism. I mean, he didn't say it exactly in those words, but he kind of used a hypothetical example saying that we could potentially track terrorists with a QR code check-in if the police need to. Now, that's a stretch. I can't imagine any self-respecting terrorist checking in before they carry out their terror activities. But it's just a stretch to kind of say that we need to keep this in place and we need to have the police have access to this data, some mechanism for them to access it because it might prevent terrorism. I mean, we've literally gone from help us with our contact tracing to help us prevent terrorism. It shows you how these systems can enter our societies through the back door and then actually, honestly become the new normal. These are the underlying systems which, end up building you might have heard of, social credit systems or things where people are tracked and every activity they do, the shopping that they do, their credit history, their banking history, their vaccination history now, their medical history. All these kind of things come together to make a social credit score. So these are the backbone of these systems because once you have these things in place, it doesn't take that much more imagination for governments and authorities to bring all this data together. So it's very important that we, keep a very close eye on how our data is managed, because privacy is a concept that most of us understand. Privacy is important to us. Now, I know one of the arguments that a lot of people make is, well, if you're not doing anything illegal, why would you care if the police are tracking you? It's not necessarily about that. It's about the fact that we have to protect certain principles when it comes to data privacy, because the moment that you open the door, even just a little bit, it's just like the floodgates opening. If you don't defend these things at the earliest of stages, then it just goes haywire. And before you know it, this is just a normal part of your life. The kids will just be used to, from very early on in school, checking in with their phones everywhere they go. And, another generation from now, everyone is being tracked and traced by the government voluntarily. They're just doing it because it's part of their normal life. And these systems are then implemented into law enforcement. It's tracked with your license, these COVID passports, these things that they're planning, it's all kind of come together into this, social credit system. Because you might hear about social credit system in China. That doesn't mean that this system was something that was created in one go. No, this system is still being created in China. It's all these little pieces and elements coming together, whether it's from government systems implemented by private industries. It's just a matter of bringing all that data together. So it's very important that we set guidelines and frameworks in how our data is accessed and managed, especially by the government. See, it's a lot more dangerous when the government has willy-nilly access to all this kind of information. When you sign up to Facebook, for instance, yes, you're giving away your right to privacy, and there's terms and conditions. Now, when we signed up to this QR code thing, actually, wait, we never signed up to this. It was just forced onto us. And it's been put together ad hoc as they go. So that becomes even more crucial, that we're very careful with the powers that are given to the authorities when it comes to this thing. I would say, the best possible thing to do here is actually to have very definitive, clear guidelines on this, how this data is used. And, I know a lot of people are against this completely, which is totally a legitimate position to have. But if they're going to keep this system in place, we need to make sure that we still protect the people that use these kind of systems to check in, because, at the end of the day, we don't know how this will be used. Now, initially we heard that this QR code data would be kept on their servers for, I think, 28 days or something, and then it's deleted or whatever it is. Now, even now, I'm not even sure about that. If they have some sort of data retention, if the police can subpoena this data 1 year from now for whatever purpose that they need to. See, you might not be a criminal, but, you might end up involved in some random police investigation because the only lead they have are the check-ins in a store. Okay? And then for some reason, they really want to, get to the bottom of this case. So they start prying into your life. And you have nothing to do with this thing at all. Okay? You have nothing to do with this, but for some reason, you're caught up in all of this because of some place you checked into. Or other ways that the QR code system can be compromised is someone can go around, take your phone, check into multiple places, and then, bang, commit a crime. Now, I know I'm talking in hypotheticals now, but you see how these systems can be compromised. So even if you're not a criminal, which most people don't think they are, which is fine, it's important that we protect our data privacy. I know I'm harping on the same thing over and over, but it's very important that we start paying attention to this QR code system and the slow way that is creeping into our lives and becoming normal. This kind of mass use of QR code systems to check in everywhere, as much as the TV and these people will be telling you that this was the intended purpose of QR codes and all this kind of thing. No, it really isn't. QR codes serve a specific purpose for people that want to use them by choice. Like anything in life, when you want to choose to use these systems like QR codes, it's great technology. But when it's forced upon you, especially onto a public who are maybe not as tech literate when it comes to these kind of systems, there are massive, massive consequences. A lot of people don't understand how these systems can be compromised. There's so many different ways to hack QR codes. There's so many different ways to gather data from QR codes. And I think we're seeing the very kind of beginnings of those problems creeping in, because there's so many anecdotal reports now of people who are getting spam calls in Melbourne and in Victoria. And they swear that it's only been happening since they've been checking in using QR code systems. Now, this is not the Services Victoria app. This is the app that they used was a few months ago, before the government actually implemented the Service Victoria QR code system and unified everything. All the businesses and cafes and restaurants and all these kind of things were just using whatever QR code website or app or whatever they could find online. And a lot of that data that was gathered in the first few months, no one knows where that data is or where it's gone to. Maybe it's in a foreign country, we don't know. And that data is actually, this is my opinion, but it's being mined. People are being spam called. A lot of the information that you gave initially before the Services Victoria app is what came here, is in the hands of third parties now. Now, there's not much people can do with just your address and phone number and where you've been to shop and all this kind of stuff, but it shows you the dangers of these types of systems. So I think it's very important we keep an eye on Victoria Police. It's very important that we apply pressure to ensure that there's legislation and protections when it comes to how this data is stored and kept and ultimately deleted. It should be destroyed. There's no need for data retention for this system, because they only need it for 14 days technically, but let's say 20 days, 30 days, doesn't matter. After that time period, it should be deleted. I don't think we should be even using these things as mandatory to begin with, because it's so dangerous. But yeah, again, guys, just keep an eye on this QR code thing. I think we're going to see a lot more issues with this going forward. Thanks for watching the video.